All right, the next thing that I wanted to talk about here was in the classroom, I have put in the, I believe it's in the discussion area, a bunch of things for you. So one of them is the principles of animation, which we're going to talk about today. So you can go ahead and grab that PDF. I've also put in a PDF of sketches. It's called Sketches, and it says due in week 2. And I want to talk about that here in just a moment. And then I put a link to my effects board on Pinterest. I realized when I did this that this is not clickable. So I put it down here in the topic as well, so that if you click on the first link there, then this is clickable. So in the discussion window. This topic right there then for Pixie Dust is our first assignment. And let me just take a look at this. I have it keyed in that it closes on the 26th. And that was fine for me. I think that what we're going to do is take a look at this sheet right now. So again, this is the sketches. And if you kind of either look at the sketches and then go back and forth between the outline for our class, and you can see here that somebody's already emailing me, and I don't know what this is.
Yeah, that was me, my
Evan,
bad.
yeah, so don't do that.
Yeah, I did that before
Stop doing
class.
that.
I won't do it again, promise.
Because look,
Yeah,
like over in my Yahoo now, I get like, people are, it comes
okay.
in there too. So don't do that. It freaks me out. Stop freaking me out.
I promise I won't do it again.
I have a faint heart. You're going to kill me.
All
Like, oh
right.
no, I did something wrong. My boss is going to fire me. All right. So on this sheet, then so go ahead and download this sheet and just take a look at it. And then once again, the idea is to bounce back and forth between that and the outline here. I'm just going to close this module so we can see it. And so today we're going to talk about the principles, and I'll introduce the first topic. You can see here that what they're talking about is hierarchies, or the idea of cycling, which we will talk about a little bit more here in just a second, grouping and libraries. This is all pertains to Toon Boom animation. Smoke, steam, dust, tornadoes, explosions, gun blasts, laser blasts, bubbles, volcanoes, water drips, splashes, lava, mud, origins, orbs, beams, shattering glass and ice and rock. So in my list here, I have, I put that list down. And like I said, I've been teaching this class since 2017. And the first couple of times that I taught this class, I just ran right through it. I just we did everything by the book. And it's like, you know what? It might make more sense to combine projects, because by the time you get to week 12, shattering glass and shattering rock is like super easy. The demo takes like 30 minutes. It's really not that hard at all. And then it gives you a month to put your final project together. And when I was doing this, like the second time, I kind of realized that it might make sense to, instead of just running this like a train down the railroad tracks, is to start combining projects right away. And so we're going to kind of jump around a little bit. And the first thing here is that they're talking about dust in week 3. So we're just going to kind of do a traditional pixie dust thing here in week 1. So if you go and look at the sketch that I drew, that I made for you here, there's a couple of things to consider. And what I'm going to do is, I think I could just draw right on this. So I'm going to just draw right on here. What we're doing is setting this up for animation or game. And most of the stuff that we are going to be using uses a 16:9 ratio for the screen. And so what this means here is that if you take 16 by 9 and you divide the numbers, you get 1.777. So in Cinema, this is just the regular first jump to HD ratio. So that when we start our projects in Toon Boom, it's either 1920 by 1080, which is fine, or 1280 by 720. That one's okay too. Both of these two things are the same. But when you're doing drawings, what I want you to be doing here is just kind of looking at the list of special effects that we're going to do in this class and start combining them. What I wanted you to do was have a layout of these sketches like this and the number of the projects, so that I know that you're on the same page with me. There is a little bit of creativity, so if you wanted to try something different or combine something a little different for yourself, you're welcome to do that. But I would like to see it so that I know that you're in the right place, that you're not going to get lost, or you're not going to get overwhelmed or anything like that. So let me continue to explain. This ratio, which is 1.77, can get translated to a bunch of other things. If you're doing sketches, you could draw at 16 by 9 inches. I mean, that would just be incredibly too big. Or you could take 16 by 9 of these boxes, which would be too big. You could cut it in half, and you could say 8 by 4.5 is the same ratio as the HD up here. It's the same cinematic ratio. 8 by 4.5, that's a good size just to study it if you want to. But you could also take it down again to 4 by 2.25, which is the same ratio here, which is kind of what I've done a little bit. I kind of taken a jump in between here. And what I've done for these sketches is used 4 by 7 or 7 by 4. And if I just bring my calculator up, you'll see that that's actually pretty close. It's not going to let me bring my calculator up. So I'm going to turn this off for just a moment. So if I take 7 and divide it by 4, it's 1.75. And that's close enough. So if I get my little grid paper out and I'm just making my sketches by 4 by 7 blocks, it gives me a really great estimate of what my thumbnails are going to look like. And thumbnails are a very great place to start thinking. So let's just take a look at this first one here. So this first one is just pixie dust. And according to my notes here, when I'm going to kind of finalize this either by the end of today or when we meet next Friday, is the final due dates for these. So this is not due next week. This pixie dust thing that we're going to start here today will more than likely be due in week 3. And right now I realized I made a mistake on my control sheet, so let me fix that. Okay, the next one down here is a flag, and that's just from our list. And you can see that I kind of drew a little bomb back here. And I kind of redid it. I have another version where there's kind of like a pirate ship. Oh, it's not taking my pencil here. So you could kind of think to yourself that you could just draw yourself a pirate ship or just any kind of boat and just put a flag going up here, and that there would be a bomb on it. And you can do these little kind of sketches yourself. Just to combine a project. So this would be like a bomb, and the flag moving at the same time. This is our orb here. And I've kind of just been, this was the thing, this orb thing right here was the thing that kind of started this whole thing here, because, and we're going to take a look at a bunch of examples here in just a minute, that when people are doing their final projects down here, you can see that some of them have created like a chemistry lab or a mad scientist's lab, and the orb will come and crash through a window. So like in this drawing number 8 right here, this was my idea, that the orb would come in, it would crash through a window, it would come over here, and it would just emanate beams, and it would spin around, and that would either start the fire, or the fire would be already lit underneath the Bunsen burner. And this little flask right here has little liquid in it and steam coming out, and then it explodes. So keeping in the spirit of adding 2 or 3 effects together for our final, this one is kind of cool. And again, you'll see examples of that in a minute. And the other thing that perpetuated this idea of combining weeks and effects was the volcano. So in the volcano, they have actual smoke, which you can't really see here because I didn't color it in, but there's smoke, there's lava, there's lightning. If you build out this composition to include a lake right here, and maybe a little pond right here, you can get bubbles and a water splash all in the same thing, all in the same composition. Because of that, this is not going to be a 1-week project. If I thought about this just going, well, this could be your final, but it's up to you. You do have some creativity. I like the chemistry lab to be your final itself. The other thing, and this is a tornado. You can't really see it clearly, but it's a tornado. And we'll go over this, but in the tornado, there's lightning, there's debris fields, there's flashes behind it. There's all kinds of things that's in this one here. So pixie dust lives by itself as project 1. The flag can live by itself if you want. The bomb can live by itself. And it keeps it a little easier. The orb here, and you can combine the orb and the bomb if you want, but everyone should be on the same page with doing this volcano. And once again, I will show you examples of what these little thumbnails actually became. Tornado. Sometimes people like doing the water splash all by itself, which is fine. It gives you a chance to really study the shapes of the water and everything. And so just going really quick down the line of all our special effects, pixie dust, smoke and steam, tornado, explosions, gun blasts, laser blasts, and plasma, which I didn't quite include on here because you can kind of put it with this one. Bubbles. And just a quick note on the bubbles is that I don't want the floating bubbles that you might have seen like in Disney's The Sword and the Stone. I want like popping bubbles. And and anything we do in this class is not going to be crazy complicated at all. It's just going to be work. You just kind of have to figure out the approach for whatever the effect that you're doing, and then realize that you set up a little sketch like this, and then you just start producing it. And the concept, the theory, the principles behind it are not that hard whatsoever. It's just going to take you a little bit of time to do all the drawings. If anyone is familiar with anything in animation, we are not going to do a series of rough drawings and then set the keys in place and then do breakdowns and then do in-betweens and then go back and go and do a clean pass. We're not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to work straight ahead, and we're going to work clean as we go. So it makes things faster. All right. Let me pick up the papers I just dropped. All right, so I'm just looking at this note that I have right here. And here's an example of me just continuing to think my pencil. And so there is variety here. We're gonna just set like a horizon line here. And this is kind of like an ocean. So there's an ocean. And over here, there's a little lighthouse. And this lighthouse is emanating an orb or a beam, or it can start that way. And the thing that this allows us to do is study rain and a water splash. So in here, we've got rain and a splash and an orb and a flash of light here. Which kind of covers the idea of the gun blasts, because these things, the light emanating from this source here, it's the same thing as a gun blast. And that's up to you. If you wanted to do like a whole series of gun blasts because they're related more to games, that would be fine. So you're doing guns and explosions at the same time. That's a possibility as well. All right. So before I do anything else, I'm going to erase my little notes here. And I'm going to ask you all if you have any questions just before I continue. I don't have my chat open, so I can't see it, anybody writing.
Well, my question is, are you going to want these like hand drawn on paper, or can we use Photoshop?
No. This is all done in Toon Boom, which is the next thing that I wanted to talk about here. So you should have seen that. Let me stop sharing my screen. Oops, cancel. So you should have seen from the class setup here that there's a couple of things that you can do. I'm trying to. So no, that's not the one I'm looking for. I thought there was a little. Oh, there was a little note somewhere in the class. I forget where it is. It's saying one of the things that we're looking for is you working in Toon Boom. Oh, it wasn't listed. So let me do this right now. I'm going to go back down the line. You should have heard through your cohort, through your classmates, that we do use Toon Boom here, but there are a couple other options. The Toon Boom is available to you through the school. You can get it for free. I got schmutz in my glasses here. So let me just make a couple of notes here. Actually, let me say this first. For any of you, let me turn my camera back on. For any of you who are not quite ready to, something's wrong with my Zoom here. Hold on one second. Yeah, that's weird. Okay. For those of you who are not or haven't been thinking about this at all, there is an application called Rough Animator, and let me get back to your screen here. And this can work too. So Rough Animator looks like this. It is $5. It is $4.95, $4.99. And you can work in that if you'd like. If you go out to the internet and you just kind of start oops, that's not what I want. I want this one. So Rough Animator works on Mac and a PC. It works on a tablet. It works in a bunch of places. This is the website for it. It's $4.99. It works pretty good, and it looks like this, and it's pretty easy to use. But I will prefer to have you using Toon Boom. So once again, this Rough Animator, and I'm going to post this in the chat as soon as I get back to it. So, and then Toon Boom looks like this. And again, you have the ability to get this through the school. So let me do a consensus from you here. Fatima, what are you planning on using? Fatima, she disappeared.
Yes, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I'm trying to get an idea of what applications you're going to be using
For drawing?
to do your special effects for drawing.
Maybe Photoshop.
Which one?
Photoshop?
Photoshop. Okay. It's a little more difficult, but it can be done. Okay. Alex?
I want to try to do Toon Boom, but
Okay.
I'm having problems with that right now.
Your audio is cutting out a little bit. I didn't hear the last part with what you said.
Oh, I said I'm having like technical problems with Toon Boom.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing. Get it working. If you need to, this rough animator thing is only $5 and you can start working in it. I'll give everyone an explanation here in just a second. Devin?
I'm actually doing the Toon Boom Harmony download from the Academy right now, so
Okay.
I'll be using that.
Toon Boom, okay.
Yeah.
You?
I plan to use Toon Boom.
Toon Boom, okay. Fernando?
Photoshop.
Which one?
Photoshop.
Photoshop, okay. And again, I'm not going to cover the demo on that one. You'll just have to dive into that cold pool yourself. Justin?
I'm actually trying to find the link or something to download Toon Boom from. I'm not sure exactly where on the website to get it.
From the school?
Go to Portal, and then go to Software, and then it's on the left side.
Got that? Justin?
Yeah, I got it.
Got it,
I'm
okay.
available now.
Matt, what are you going to use?
I use Toon Boom.
Toon Boom, okay. It's the best one. In the chat, Paul, what are you going to use? Gabby?
Toon Boom?
Toon Boom, okay. Mark?
I'm going to use Toon Boom.
Okay. Simran?
Oh,
Download Toon Boom.
What's that?
I'm gonna download Toon Boom.
Toon Boom, okay.
I'm sorry. I feel like,
What? Oh, Mark, what?
yeah, I was probably going to use Toon Boom.
Okay. Charlie?
Toon Boom.
Okay. Sharon?
I'm thinking of maybe like TV Paint or Toon Boom.
Okay. Shane?
I'm going to use software from the Apple App Store. It's like a cheap one. It's kind of similar to the one you recommended.
What was it called?
I forgot the name. I can type it in chat later. It's
Okay.
like on the you can use it on all the iOS devices.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it just off the top of my head. All right, so that gives me a good idea. So what I won't do then is, unless you request it. Well, actually, I can do this right now, just really quickly. One of the things that I like about this rough animator is, let's say that you have an issue with Toon Boom and that the license isn't working just right, or that any of your applications aren't working exactly the way you'd like them to. This particular application falls into that particular category of being such a simple application to use that you can master it in like 10 minutes. So you saw the website. Basically, it's just this simple. And it appears that it's a little different if you're on a Mac or a PC or a tablet. The dude who wrote the code for this wrote it for a PC first, and then he transferred it, he ported it over to a Mac. So some of the features for us Mac people are just a little different, but it's still the same simplicity. All of these windows here, all of these little windows fall under Window, and I have them all open. You have Tools, Options, Timeline, Preferences, Color. That's it.
Yo, Billy, your screen is not
I
sharing.
don't have my screen open. All right, sorry about that. So again, this is just rough Animator. This is what you see. It's what this is. All of these windows are already open right here. That's all you have. You start a new file. There's a little bit of edit. There's moving things around. And it's just you can figure it out yourself. If you have any inclination to use this whatsoever, I have this set as a brush, and my brush is set at 4 pixels. Opacity is 100%. Spacing is 20 because it is a vector app, I believe. You add a drawing in the timeline down here by just saying add a drawing after, and then if you click your background down here and you say you want to draw in your background, you're just drawing like some graceful hills or something like you might see, and then that background you want to extend it. Hold on one second. You add another layer here by saying add a layer, and then you add frames to this by just saying I want to add frames to it, or you add another after it and it takes on the same attribute. This background here it will follow along because it's independent of the actual drawings that you're doing. So we're just going to draw a rising sun right here, same color. So it's just really easy to use. It's just super easy. So there's layers and drawings. And so if anybody gets trapped or panics or anything, this is something that you can use. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back over to my preview. I think did I have this open in preview? Oh, I had it open in. Hold on one second. All right, so the first thing that we're going to really do today is we're going to talk about the principles of animation. And I don't want to like completely dwell on this like crazy mad. Hold on a second, it's not taking my command. All right, there we go. All right, so this is available for all of you, like I said, in the discussion area. There's a whole bunch of textbooks that you can buy if you're an animator. The Richard Williams Survival Kit is excellent if you want to be a full-time 100% animator. There's another book called Timing for Animation. There's the Preston Blair book. There's Walter Foster. There's a whole bunch of textbooks for animation. But it's funny because the principles of animation as they're listed only truly show up in The Illusion of Life, which was written by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson, published in 1981. They were two of the 9 old men from the Disney studios, Juilliard University, Cal Arts, that whole bit. On the page 41 of the Principles of Animation, they were listed 12 principles, and those 12 principles are numbered to the right of these principles as they're listed here. And they were in almost random or non-specific order, with Squash and Stretch being first. It's my assumption as a journeyman apprentice animator when I was learning that the animators at Disney didn't really have a list on the wall of what the principles of animation were. There might have been a list written down under someone's camera sheets or something. But as those principles were listed, they just seemed like they were random: squash and stretch, anticipation, and then it jumped down to staging. And for someone learning it, it was kind of quirky at best to kind of figure out what the lead animators were doing. It just wasn't written down. And when they finally published the book, it was really random. So as an animation instructor, what I've done is I've put these into categories, with the very first principle of animation being the illusion of life. That is what you are doing. As an animator, your first principle of animation is to create the illusion of life. And then there's another category for movement that includes timing and spacing, easing in and easing out, or slowing in and slowing out. That's what this little abbreviation means. Slowing in and slowing out of a key position. Spacing of drawings, arcs of motion, anticipation is the opposite of the main action before the main action starts. Squash and stretch, which is the easiest principle of animation to understand. I put in cycling because even though the Disney animators technically, literally would never cycle anything, it was against their protocol. But in game animation, we have to cycle everything. Just for the expediency of our game engines working correctly, almost everything, walk cycles, idles, explosions, everything gets cycled. And so we need to put cycling in the movement dynamics. Overlapping action is a subcategory all by itself, where overlapping action, follow through, secondary action, drag, counteraction, successive breaking of joints, those are all overlapping action. I put in contrast because it's a reminder that many animation teachers will create their own list. They'll create their own groupings and listings and of their principles of animation. Story has this category for acting. We're not going to do any of that in this class, but we will talk about appeal. You got to make things completely aesthetically pleasing. Characterization and character design, that's all part of story. Walt Stansfield is a famous animator who animated Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, and he has 28 principles of animation. He was a Disney animator, and he has 28 principles. And in those, they included all kinds of things of art, like the rules of art: point, line, plane, balance, light, texture, direction, flow, perspective, unity, all of that, all of the rules of art. So from that, I parsed it out and I put in solid drawing. You are going to be drawn, an animator draws three-dimensionally. You use a line of action or a gesture within your character animation. Again, we won't be doing character animation in this class, but you want to think about perspective, you want to think about style, and there's the word aesthetics. For the category of camera, where everything is staged, everything is composed in a certain position on the stage. If you have, your audience is going to be part of your composition, they're the one participating in this event. If there are 2 or 3 or more things moving within a shot, isolationism, which was coined by my friend Ken Cope, means that your eye is going to see the thing that's moving the fastest. So if you have like everything moving at the same kind of pace, but there's one thing that moves quicker, that's what your eye will see. And as an animator, as a designer, that's the thing you should concentrate on. Exaggeration has its own category because almost all of these can be exaggerated to some extent or another. You can exaggerate all of the other principles. You can make things really cartoony, or things can be pushed more towards the illusion of life. And then there's the process. How do you work? Do you work pose to pose? Or do you draw? And pose to pose means key to key, or do you work straight ahead? And we're in our class here, we're going to be doing almost everything straight ahead. So this is for you. And I realized that when I was looking at the class setup here, we're about half and half. I got about half animators, half game students. So that's yours to grab. There was another version of this that has a whole bunch of other things, but this is fine. So let me go back to Zoom. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a moment. Let me check my notes. Okay, so there is. Okay, so this is a perfect place to take a break. Even though we've been only doing this for an hour, this is a natural break. So I'm going to, one new message. Oh yeah, I think the LMS is actually, I've worked for probably 6 or 7 colleges, maybe 8 different colleges. And I kind of liked the interface, the LMS itself with the Academy. There are some things that are kind of cool about it. It's very visual and colorful and good, but I guess there were some problems on the back end where it's dates and projects and due date. I don't know. They're changing everything. Within the next couple of semesters, you're going to see that they switched over to Brightspace, which is a completely different set of problems. You'll see it. It's if you're here over the next year, you'll see the switch, and you'll go back and think, oh wow, I kind of like the look of the old one we had. When I work at Kenyatta College, we work in Canvas, and if you go to any community college, you work in Canvas, and that's okay. And it has its own little weird problems too. All right. Well, look at that. I got a ton of messages. Okay, so let's go. I have Toon Boom open here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this away without saving it. It's not listening to me, so I'm just going to close this. And I'm not going to save it. And I believe, okay, so this is the first thing you get. Just let me jump back to the screen here. How many of you, and you can just raise your hand by using the reaction thing, right? Like this. How many of you have worked in Toon Boom before? Or you can talk. How many, okay, there's a couple of you. How many have not?
I have.
worked in-
I did. I don't know how to do the button yet.
You don't have any buttons there?
I don't know how to do it.
You hover
Oh,
your
here it
mouse.
is.
Hover your
Okay,
mouse.
I got it.
Got it. All right, so who has not worked in Toon Boom ever?
I have not.
A couple of people have not. Okay, so let's get into Toon Boom. You open up Toon Boom. This is the first thing you get. I should warn you that
I can't see your screen if you're.
you
supposed
can't
to be
see
sharing.
anything because your teacher's being a jerk and he's not sharing his screen with you. All right, how's that?
Perfect.
Can you see it now? Okay. So this is the first thing you get. One of the things that you should know is one of the reasons why it's called Harmony. It's because there's an animation application, there's a exposure sheet application, there's an animation application, there's a render application, there's an ink and paint application. There's like 20 of separate little sub applications within the Toon Boom folder itself. And they all work in harmony with each other. And it's supposed to be used over a Unix network, over a large studio. And I don't know why schools purchased or why Harmony sold them, but no school that I've ever worked at is set up to work in harmony with each other. We should be just working with the animation application. And because of that, there's a couple of things that you should know. When you say create a scene, the scene here, it really should be a shot. You are not creating a scene, you're creating shots. So let's just start this. We're just going to put, this is 12 February, so I'm just going to put 12 February. And you see that it's going to the location. Right now it's set up at 1080p. So if you do this little toggle down, you can see that it's set up for HD 1080p at 24 FPS. If you wanted to use 1280 by 720, you could pick this one, but you could just leave it at default. And it comes in 1920 by 1080. The frame rate, I don't know why the frame rate is 23.97. That's like old. It is set up for, I think I switched it. There we go. It's set up for 24. And then just say create the scene. All right, and I'm not going to go too slow. I'm not going to go too fast, but let's just cover the very basics. Within Toon Boom yourself, your middle mouse is your zoom, and you'll see this better once you come over here to this palette. Hopefully your original palettes are set up so that they're very similar to mine, and that your windows are not all over the place. If you see it differently, then you can go to Windows and Workspace and arrange it for yourself. But it is a very robust and crazy complicated application. It could take you 2 years to learn all the stuff. You can put Maya files inside of Toon Boom. You can put Photoshop files inside of Toon Boom and just work within Photoshop inside of Toon Boom independently of Photoshop. You can put Flash files inside of Toon Boom. It's a crazy, complicated, wonderful application. Hopefully yours looks like this. Over here in this timeline palette, I'm going to deselect by clicking right here, and hopefully this little blue is going to go off, and the red will indicate that now I'm working in the timeline palette. Once the drawing is deselected from blue, click on this little plus button and add a color card. Once you do that, you're going to get this little marquee. And if you do it wrong, let me Command Z out of this and do it wrong for you, because doing it wrong sometimes helps you debug what you're doing. I'm going to select this drawing layer and then click color card. And all of a sudden you'll see that the drawing layer is nested underneath the color card, and you don't want that. If you accidentally do it that way, just grab the drawing layer and move it on top of the color card. Nothing in Toon Boom will render or work unless you have a color card. It's the first rule. If you don't have a color card, it won't work. You'll try to render .move, a QuickTime movie, it will not work. So you need to put a color card in there. It's just, they should default it. They should default straight out of the box that it comes open with a color card. I don't know why they don't. All right, so this is your palette. And now that you can see that the actual stage is white, you can see that my middle mouse is the zoom button. And I have a Magic Mouse on my Mac, and it's sensitive enough, it's good. Also, the numbers 1 and 2 on your keyboard are zoom as well for whatever palette you're in. So like right here in the timeline palette, if I click on the number 2, it zooms in to the timeline. If I click on the number 1, it zooms out. But if I'm in the stage palette, it zooms into the stage. And there's a little indication right here that tells me what size I'm at. If you want to get back to the normal 100% window, hit Shift M on your keyboard. And there are a million keyboard shortcuts. If you go to Edit, if you go to Harmony Preferences, this is just a quick indication of how complicated this application can be. Each one of these tabs has its own set of preferences. You know how Photoshop has preferences? Look how many are here. If you want to do anything, you can just go to the Advanced tab and click on this button right here that says Support Overlay and Underlay. And when you do that, on your stage, you will get 4 different layers over here instead of just the default 2. You should always be drawing on the line layer. And against the wishes of the Toon Boom people themselves, I like working in the drawing mode because I need to know where my stage is. But some instructors are going to have you work in the camera mode so that you can play around with your peg bars. Well, we're just going to work in the actually we're working in the camera mode as opposed to the drawing mode. All right, so that's the first introduction. Over here on the right, if you have Toon Boom open yourself, it's going to look a little differently. You might have it set up here as your colors look like this. And so what I did is I right-clicked and I hit swatch mode. And that puts the name of the color on top of the color. And here's why you want to do that. Because if you're working on a shot that has 20 or 30 colors in it, you don't want the name and the color next to each other. It's like, wait, what? So I default mine to swatch mode. And once you do that, there's a way of selecting the color, because if you double click on the color, you're just going to get the name. And right now you've just got your RGB, white and black. If you want to make a new color, you hit this little button right here called plus, and it gives you a new color. If I double click, it's going to change the name. It'll allow me to change the name of that color. And right now it's not behaving. So I'm going to hit 4. But the thing is if you want to change this color, you have to select it and then double click on the highlight blue box that goes around it. Once you do this, you're going to get the color picker, which is like just a regular thing, but I would highly advise you playing around with this multi-color wheel mode, because this multi-color wheel mode is the most awesome way to pick colors ever on the planet, ever. In any application, everything in the world is messed up. You know, politics is messed up. There's wars going on all over the world, but this color picker should be able to solve world peace because it's so awesome. I mean, look, as you drag the colors through here with your mouse, it changes all of it. It changes the saturation, the hue, the main value, all at the same time. This is the absolute best way to pick a color. There's another thing here. If you start drawing on your stage with this color number 4, right? Anywhere in your shot that you've used that color number 4, it changes it as well. Anywhere, on any layer, any instance of this color, anywhere in the whole project, it changes it forever. And that's just the absolute coolest thing ever. No other computer application for animation can do that. All right, so that's that. All right, so like I said, there's a ton of things to think about here with Toon Boom. Let's just talk about our a couple of things first. One of them is that within this tool palette over here, you can see that it says select, right? And even as of this version, there is no keyboard shortcut that shows you know how like Photoshop, it says B and A and Q, it gives you the keyboard shortcut right there. It doesn't do that here. So you can learn them. You can just go to the preferences palette and figure out what your drawing mode is, or where they're buried in here somewhere. I forget where they are. I wrote mine down. I believe, let me see if I can remember them. I believe that it's Alt. It's always Alt. The key, see, that's the problem with Toon Boom just out of the box, is that it's never just one button for the keyboard shortcut. It's always Alt. And Alt on a Mac is Option. So Alt V is this tool. Alt S is Select. So it's like an Alt A is Subselect. Oh, no, wait, Alt Q is Subselect. So Alt S is Select. Alt Q is Subselect. Alt / is pencil. Alt > Alt U is paint. But it's funny in a ha-ha kind of way, because it defaults as unpaint, which is stupid. And if you click on it, it should default as paint. I think you can change that in your preferences. But because this paint option thing is so complicated, I always just go to this and pick what we're doing. You can paint, you can ink, you can unpaint, you can repaint, you can unpaint, you can stroke, you can close the gap. So that's just a little hint about how complicated Toon Boom can be. Here's your eyedropper. Here's your geometry tool, text, rubber stamp. Okay, so and remember, there's a bunch of other stuff that you can do with this. Right now, what we're going to do is we're just going to forget about all this other stuff. There is one thing. So if you hit Alt / which is right next to the Enter key, and go to your pencil, one of the very first things that you want to do is look at your tool settings. So in your properties for pencil, you only got two things here. You've got maximum size and centerline spacing, centerline smoothing. And what this means is that this is a vector application. And so you're not just drawing bitmaps, but you need to control the thickness, the sensitivity of your pen on the tablet. If you just got these two, they're default. I think they were default at 5, but I changed mine. You want whatever you're doing on the stage to actually look like a pencil. In order to do this, you click on this triangle here and you get the full palette. And what I have it set up here is 2.8 over 20 over 3.6 over 5. We're recording this, so you can always go back to this. The whole trick here is to make whatever you're doing look like a pencil. Your space bar is your move tool. Your middle mouse is your zoom tool. And remember, this was 1920 by 1080. So let's just do a little test right here. We're going to use this blue color and we're going to draw a circle. And so that held. And what I mean by that is that, like, let's mess this up just a little bit. And so I'm going to take the smoothing and these out like way over here, and then I'm going to draw. And you can see that it fixed it. See what I did there? Watch it again. I'm going to intentionally draw a scrappy line, and it fixes it. And you have to play around with this and get comfortable with whatever you want. But if you're trying to draw little circles and Toon Boom is doing that, let me repeat what I just did right there. So I was trying to draw a little circle. We will be drawing a little circle. It killed the circle because it's trying to vectorize it. So out of the box, then keep these vector smoothing sliders to the left. So the whole idea is you want this to behave like a pencil. Your erase tool, I forget what the keyboard shortcut for erasing is. You know, that works itself. The eraser, you want the eraser to be 40 or 50 so that it kills everything, or if you're going in small. All right, so once again, now I'm back in the pencil. We're going to zoom into this and we're going to pay attention. Right now I'm at 125%, and I'm going to go back to my pencil. And it's still fixing it. So let me zoom in so that we can see this even a little more. So I'm going to draw another little circle, and it's still kind of fixing it. So I'm going to kill these smoothing settings just a little bit. All right, so there's a couple of things that you want. So this is okay. These numbers here are okay. And again, I might have this open up on a tool monitor or somewhere where you do want whatever you're drawing as a line to stay as something that looks like a pencil. You want it to be thick and thin if you have the pressure sensitivity. So all of that is working okay at these settings. And I will, everything's to the left. All right, just put that away. All right, so there's a couple of things that you want to think about here, just in Toon Boom. And that is the composition of what we're doing here. So if you are drawing something and you realize that you want to shift your stage, then you hit Alt and Command, and you can shift your stage. And so if you want to get a little look on that, And then the only way to get out of this is Shift M. Remember that takes you back to your normal nominal size. Shift M. This is your drawing mode. This is your render mode, your render view. It will not play anything that you have animated if you are in render mode. So remember to switch the little flowers. I also understand that these little flowers are in a different place for PC people. All right, everyone okay just right now? All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna erase this. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with pixie dust. And hopefully I have enough of this on my stage. So let's just take a look at a couple. I'm gonna keep this tab open here for just a second. And we're gonna just do this hopefully quickly enough. This is what we're looking at. Oh, by the way, I've invited all of you to see my special effects board, and we will look at this board here and there and now and again during the semester. But you're always welcome to go to this board. I have just hundreds and hundreds of examples of things that are working, things to start with. You know, when we're doing fire, and you're talking about stylization of fire, something like this might be interesting to somebody, where you're not just drawing traditional fire. Fire can be all different kinds of color, and it can have all different kinds of shapes. As long as it moves like fire, it's okay. When we starting with our pixie dust, it's not listening to me. Hold on a second. All right. All right, I'm going to go to my folder. Let's look at some examples of pixie dust from your classmates over the last couple of years. So obviously this is one of my animators working. And there's just a lot of stuff going on. That was very nice. All right, and that was like the first take on that. All right, there's another one. You have 2 weeks to do this project.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I'm just figuring out the harmony thing. Do I get essentials, advanced, or premium? I don't.
Essentials is fine.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so this one's not quite as effective. I think that when you look at this, the spread of the pixie dust itself is too much in a line. It's too much like a rope. It's too much like a string. And so it's not the absolute best. Also, these file names are out of control here, right here. We'll go over this in just a minute, but I'm very, very picky about file names. And I will ride you like a monkey in a circus if you don't give me correct file names. Again, this is one of your classmates. You know, that's crazy. It's beautiful. There's lots of stuff going on. It's intense. Right now, that was 6 seconds. You know, very, very interesting. This looks like it might be another variation of that one. Okay. You getting the idea here? Again, I think the pixie dust is fine, but there's not a lot of dispersion of the actual pixie dust itself. And that's just crazy. There's so much going on there. It's like, let's watch that again. It's like, there's so much spray, there's so much pixie dust, but let's talk, this is a good one to stop because this is where we are going to start. All right, so the first thing that you want to do is do that little sketch like we talked about, that little drawing on the little graph paper. If I go back to my Harmony, the first thing that I want to do is give myself a background. It doesn't make sense to have black pixie dust on a white background. I mean, you could do that if you want, but artistically, in this drawing layer here, you might want to click on this and just write BG for background, and then give yourself a stage, and then paint that stage. So use your paint bucket tool and pick just jet black. So I just painted it jet black. There's an interesting thing in Toon Boom that is similar to Flash, and that is that there's a series of lines all the way around. Each one of these components has a line all the way around it. So you could delete all the lines, you could delete the black. You could see here that what I've done is I drew the rectangle bigger than the stage. So now if I do that bigger than the stage, I don't know where my stage is. So if I want to turn this button on right here, that's going to show you where the stage is and where your elements. So you see how I can select each one of these little lines, and I can select the actual black itself. So this little button right here shows you what your mask for your camera mask is going to look like. This button here, and I'm just going to turn the background off so you can see it, shows you what your center is and where your peripheral is. And this is a good place to start. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create another drawing layer, and I'm going to call this one my arc layer. Or I could call it my layout layer. I'm just going to put arc because it's just easier to remember, and I always use the term arc. So I'm going to add and close. Hopefully your default is that these are all vector mode. You can draw in bitmap, but I don't recommend it. Just always draw in vector mode. All right, on this arc layer, I'm going to do a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to get a red pencil out here, and we're going to divide our stage into cinematic thirds. So vertical and horizontal thirds, and just for demonstration purposes, this is close enough. So this is called cinematic thirds of vertical and horizontal. What that does is establishing focal points at the cinematic thirds. And this is a good thing to know. The center is also a focal point. And just because this graph that's coming up with this button here is indicating I can see that my thirds is actually out about right here. So this line right here is just a little off. This line right here is indicating the action safe area. It's an animation term. You don't want any action happening anywhere near the edge of the stage. So don't have any action happening there. There's also another thing in animation where another field in is, oh, hold on. And this is called title safe. And you don't want any words within this little range right here. So once again, I mean, that's a pretty big blue color right there. So I could just double click on here, and I can do a couple of things. One is I can put an alpha on that color. I can change the color to a lighter blue. And again, remember that changes it everywhere. It gives you the RGB values, hue, saturation, and value. It's just great. So once you've given your color an alpha, it splits the color in the swatch mode like this and tells you that there's a little marquee underneath it. All right, so in this palette here, because right now I'm in this palette, I'm going to touch right here in the gray to get to this palette so that my 1 and 2 keys are active. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a couple of things. In cinema school, you learn that these focal points, this cinematic third is actually really important. But there are instructors out there that say, you know what? Teaching these focal points is good, but it can be really limiting because there's a whole bunch of other areas on the stage that are good for focal points as well. And you know, you can have a focal point wherever you like. But so keep that in mind when you are doing compositions. These initial cinematic thirds are really great for establishing focal points. That they're really great, but it's not necessary that you forget about all the other ones. So just keep that in mind that some cinema teachers like it, but other teachers don't like it. All right, so on this arc layer, what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to go to the next frame. And there's a carryover from Flash here so that if I take my background and turn it back on again, if I want my background to be extended, I just put my cursor all the way out to the end of the background layer and hit F5, and that will extend the exposure of that background. All right, so on this arc layer, as soon as I touch the arc layer, I lose the black, the quote unquote black, because I'm not looking at it. And that's great because that allows me to draw. On this arc layer right here, what I'm going to do is what you saw some of your classmates doing. And I'm going to create a new color, and I'm just going to make this one in the yellow range. And this one's going to be my arc. This is going to be an actual arc. And what I want to do here is I want to establish the pixie dust coming in off the screen, circling around a couple of times. And I'm going to look at this. It's just linear. This is flat. I don't quite like this. So let's do this again. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to have it loop over. I'm going to have it, I don't like that either. I'm going to have it loop. You know, something like that. I'm going to do it one more time. And the reason why I kept fixing it, because I was thinking about those focal points. You know, I was thinking about where I was on the stage itself. There's also a couple other things to think about here. If you were to choose, well, let's just pick this red line, that the pixie dust was going to come in and it was going to go way off into the distance like it was in perspective, you could get yourself into huge, hairy trouble because all of a sudden you've established this shot where you've got to make things bigger and then smaller, and your timeline here could be way over 10 seconds. What we're doing for the pixie dust should be 5 or 6 seconds. So using this yellow line or something like it, and you can come in from the right, you can come in from the left, but this is okay right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the black color and make a new color. Again, you have to double click on the edge, and I'm going to go to a gray, and this is just going to be lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bunch of lines for myself along on this arc that dictate. I'm going to change this to make it a little darker because the grays are interfering. All right, so what this is going to do is this is going to give me the spacing for where my little orb is going to come in. And as this orb comes around here, I might want to slow this down. So I clustered these together a little bit. And you want to do this because you want to control where your orb is at any point in the timeline. So right now we might want to speed up right here. So I'm going to take the spacing and speed this up just a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at the mark of where the orb, where the little center part of the thing that's creating the pixie dust is and copying it and adding just a little bit. Copy it and add just a little bit. Now it's going pretty fast. So now I want it to slow down around this little S, so I'm going to start to slow it down a little bit, especially right here. So I'm going to cluster a bunch of drawings right there. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit. And now I'm going to go back to this timing that we had when the orb first came in. And now going around this one, I'm going to speed it up just a little bit. And I'm not counting these, I'm just looking at graphically where the spacing is. And then I want it to zip off the screen. So, oh, I don't like that one. So I'm going to speed it up just a little bit. And so my orb is going to come in from the left and go off onto the right. But keep in mind that there's going to be, even though we're not seeing it here, when this orb is over here, there's going to be a bunch of pixie dust that's falling below it. All right, so that's my arc layer. And on the arc layer, I'm going to continue it out by hitting F5 on the keyboard. I'm also going to take this thing right here, and I've already explained this. So I'm just gonna kind of get rid of this if it's okay with everybody. So I'm just gonna grab my selection tool, and I'm gonna grab everything on the first frame of the arc layer and delete it. And then I'm gonna I have an empty frame right here. So I can take this, and so this is still empty. And I'm gonna Z this because it's still showing me, oh, hold on. Oh, hold on a second. All right, so one thing that you can do here, there's a couple of different ways of working with Toon Boom. And on this one, you can either hit the minus key on the keyboard, which is the key, it's a minus, there's two minus keys. The one is way off onto the right, and then the other one is above the numeric pad on the keyboard itself. And that's another way of adding frames. So if I take the limit, and I take my limit out to 120 frames, which is 5 seconds, and I wanted to extend this background, I could just select the background and hit the plus key a whole bunch of times to make it continuous exposure, or I could hit the minus key to decrease the exposure, or I could go to the end and just hit F5, and that takes it all the way out. And so this one, the same thing. I'm just going to click on the arc layer and hit F5, and now I can see my arc. Once the little orb that's creating the pixie dust has gone all the way off to the right of the screen here, it's still going to be trailing some of the pixie dust behind it. So you know that somewhere around frame 85 or frame 90, that's where this orb has to be. So on your arc layer, if you wanted to make a note for yourself, just using some other strange blue color or something, that you want to know that somewhere out here should be frame 85. In the animation industry, if you wanted to indicate anything that's a frame, use a square with a line through it. And this is a graphic indication of a frame gate for a film projector, an actual film projector. And in the old days of cinema, that meant 85 frames. Some animation studios indicated frames by X, but because of special effects, you had an F and a V and an X, that this could be layer 85X. And so just note to yourself that sometime around 85, that your orb should be about right here. In order to set this up properly, we're going to set up another drawing layer. And this one we're going to just call our orb. And it's going to be a vector we're going to add and close. So in the world of cinema, if a movie starts playing, you don't want action to happen automatically. You want a slight pause. If we look out here at frame 24, that is 1 second. So in the window here, I can see I've actually selected frame 825. So frame 24 is 1 second. And that's a lot of time, you know, click, click, that's 1 second. In animation, a beat is 8 frames. It's 1/3 of a second. So on frame 8, if I wanted to start my animation here, that gives the viewer a pause when your movie starts that nothing is going on. So right here, I can start drawing my orb, and let's pick an orb color. So I'm going to come back over here. And my orb, I want my orb to be in the white range and maybe just a little blue. And I'm going to call this orb. And remember, you can change all this later if you want, but that's my orb color. And I'm going to come back to my stage. I'm going to click on the gray in the stage and hit Shift M. And I'm going to come out here. So on frame 8, which is a good frame, I want frame 9 because that gives me an 8-frame delay. I'm going to draw my first orb. And so right here, I'm just going to draw in a little orb like this. And we're going to just do a couple of things. One thing that you can do is copy and paste this. You know, you could just select it, copy paste, and move it all the way around. That way the consistency of the line isn't going to change all that much. But it's not the best way to do animation. There's a faster way. And that is that if you use the greater than and less than signs on the keyboard, so look down here in the timeline, and I'm just going to use the greater than sign and hit the greater than sign twice. And I'm going to turn my onion skin on for everything, which is this button here. And anything that's before the key that I'm drawing on is red, and anything that's before it will be green. And even in this application here, it's the same thing. It's red and green. So now I'm on frame 11, and I'm just going to take my glasses off so I can see a little better and make sure I'm not pressing the mouse. And I'm going to go right with my ticks. And I'm going to keep this consistent. I'm just going to go straight ahead. I'm going to make sure and see what it did here in the timeline. It filled in that extra frame right there. So I want to be on 2s. So I'm going to take my orb and I'm just going to hit 2. I'm going to just draw. And I'm also paying attention that Toon Boom is behaving itself because it can be nasty sometimes. The memory lag can cause all kinds of troubles. And so this is just establishing the first timing. I'm also kind of getting my eye looking over to the right to see how far along down the timeline I am. I didn't engineer this, and I want to make sure that I want to hit this area by frame 85. If not, then the problem would be is I've given myself too many frames to draw. And I could very well have given myself too many, but that's okay. This is just a demo. All right, this is where it's going faster. And we're just going to go with this. It's going to look cool. And right now we're about frame 83. And you can see now that it's much faster to just draw this little orb in here than to try to copy and paste it. All right, so I'm going to make a mistake right here accidentally. I'm going to make this one on 3s. And now you can see that I can't see the onion skin. So I'm going to open up the preview with these little buttons down here. I should be able to see it again. And now I'm going to say, oh, I drew this one right here, right? And all of a sudden, oh no, this is wrong. Just click on this one and hit the minus key once to change your timing. All right, I'm going to just go backwards here. And right here, I changed this color. This color is not right. It switched to the blue color for some reason. So I'm going to take my, I'm just going to, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to erase these. I mean, I could repaint them if I wanted, but I'm going to make sure that everything that I'm drawing is consistently the same color. So the orb, and then go to this frame right here, and then back to your pencil tool. Again, that's Alt /, and keep your colors consistent. Once you've established all of your positions, and I can see here, so I'm going to go into the timeline, hit the 1 key a couple of times. And see, that was a strange little delay right there. I'm going to take the limit out. To maybe 170, 180, something like that. And then I'm going to F5 both the arc and the background layer. And I'm going to go back to this puppy right here. And I've drawn that one, so I want to go 2 frames out, and then I'm going to draw this little orb. 2 frames out, draw this one. We'll be able to see what our animation looks like here in just a moment. And then we can make an evaluation. So now it's starting to move quicker. I could have brought up all the little Toon Boom folders that I have, but you wouldn't get a real good sense of how long it takes to do this if I did that. So that's why I'm doing it new for you. All right, good. So we're only at frame 140, which isn't too bad. If you wanted to make any kind of adjustments, you can see that I've only spent maybe 15 or 20 minutes doing this, and that you could just erase everything and go back and start over again. All right, so what I would recommend here is I'm going to take my space bar, I'm going to come out here, and even though I may not be able to see all the, because I won't be able to see these, is draw them in there anyway, so that reminds you to do the falling pixie dust that's behind it. So I'm going to go 2 frames out, draw this one, 2 frames out, draw this one. This is just to remind you that you have to do those other ones. And maybe even more than the time that you've given yourself. All right, so you can see that I made a mistake right here. This one is on 1s, so add a frame. And this one is on 1s as well, so add a frame. So let's take a look and see what this looks like. Let's go back to frame 1. And my play button is in a strange place. It is here. Let's hit check the stage and hit Shift M. Come on, Toon Boom. It might be that it wants me to save this, so I'm going to save it. Shift M. There we go. All right, I'm going to save this. Oh, I already named the file. So let's hit play. I remember that your play button might be in a different place. All right, so in my first evaluation here, I'm going to redo this whole thing because that's moving too slow. It's moving way too slow. So this is really great to make a mistake like this. So when you're doing yours on your arc layer, you can just turn this orb layer off, right? We didn't spend any time, or you could delete the layer. You could just click on this and right click and say, delete this layer, right? You could just delete it. But I'm going to say on this arc layer with now this bright color red, I'm going to take my pencil and just, or you could double the timing. You could just say, let's just do double timing and go like this. And if you really wanted to, I don't recommend this, but you could tear apart your timeline and then just get rid of every other drawing in here. But I don't recommend that. It's probably easier for you to just redo the initial orb. Oops, hold on. All right, and remember one main thing about animation is testing it, doing a pencil test, trying it again, trying it a different way. No one ever gets it right the first time. Shift M. All right, so let's turn this orb layer off right here and give ourselves a new orb layer. And let's just do this one fast so we can make sure that our timing is correct. So I want this drawing layer, I want to call it orb 2. Oops, orb 2. And I also want it to be on top. So I'm going to grab it and move it on top of the other orb. And see what it nested it right there. So I'm going to Z that out. I'm going to put it on top. There. So this one's off. And I'm going to start at the same place, frame 9. And I'm going to use my orb color. And let's just do this one quickly. Watch your timeline. All right, and there's another reason why I'm doing it this way, because I want you to understand your timing. I made a mistake down here. This one's on 3s, so keep it going correctly. Is to really don't just settle on something. Figure out a way, like I'm doing it right now, to do it fast. And then evaluate what you're doing. All right, so quite literally, I can see in the corner of my eye that the new timing here that I'm doing is only going to be half, which is half the work. It's going to be better. It'll give us room to play with all the other things that we're going to add to this. All right, so once again, take this puppy out. Let me go back to where so we were on that frame, so I want to be here. 2 frames, 2 frames. Let's go even more. 2 frames. And I made another mistake right here, so fix it. Oops, fix it again. All right, and then add a frame here. So let's take a look at what we've got. Shift M. Come on, Toon Boom. Shift M and play. It's going to go to the end of the timeline. Hold on a second. And let's do it again. So let's hit play. So here it comes. And that's a better timing. That's a better timing right there. Let me just take a couple things. We have 180 frames. You're not going to need all those frames. We are at 24 FPS. So now, the next thing we need to do is on another layer here, and this is the best way to do this. We're going to do cloud. You can call it whatever you'd like. I'm going to call mine cloud. All right, and on this, what we're going to do is we're going to oh, there's one more thing here. So now that we've established this orb layer that is working, one thing that you can do is use your G key to navigate to the next keyframe. So it just bypasses the on twos part. So I'm hitting my G key on the keyboard, and that goes forward in time. And then the F key, which is right next to it, goes backwards in time. So now that you've established those keys, that's a really great way to navigate. All right, so remember that when you're building your drawings, use the greater than and less than signs. That helps you navigate your timeline on twos or ones or threes or whatever. But then once you've established those keys, you can use your F and G keys. F and G keys, man. All right, so we're gonna establish our cloud layer right now. And this is new, so we're gonna have to use our greater than and less than signs. I'm gonna take this orb layer and I'm gonna select it and make a new color, which is the same color exactly. I'm gonna double click on the blue line of it. I'm gonna change this just slightly. I wanna give it a different color altogether. And I'm gonna give it the same name as the layer and say, okay, and just put it away. And now I'm going to open up. Remember that there's a couple of different things that you're doing here. On this arc layer, I'm just going to make a note for you that once you draw a pencil line, if you hit the K key, you can see that it gives you the stroke. And when you're doing a pencil line, actually there should be, I'm going to hit this key right here. And it gives you points. That's the direct select tool. Once you do this, a pencil line, I'm going to zoom in on this, gives you points that are right down the middle of the pencil line. You should know this. If you're using a brush and you have the same kind of deal, once you choose that brush, or just select the brush, now you've got points on the outside of the line. So that's the complete difference. I like using a pencil when I'm thinking pencil, and I like using a brush when I'm thinking pencil. Now, once again, I hit the K key on the keyboard to indicate those strokes. So that's the keyboard shortcut there. That's actually a one key shortcut. All right, so that's on my arc layer, and I'm just gonna leave it there. I'm gonna go back to my cloud layer, and I'm gonna hit Shift M to go back to my main. Come on, Toon Boom. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a bit of cloud dust behind here. I'm gonna hit the brush. I get a whole new set of tools over here, and I'm going to pick like this dusty pastel. And you can kind of see that it's remembering where I was. So on this first frame, I'm just gonna draw this. So that's okay. And now you can see what the students who had those examples behind you were doing. They were doing this dust thing here. So this cloud, I'm going to double click on it again, and I'm going to give it an alpha of a little bit, just a little bit, because I want it to just be an impression. This is the best, absolute best way to do this. On this first layer, just get this cloud to go behind it just a little bit. Let me zoom in on this so you can see it. And I'm going to, yeah, see the K is showing me the stroke of that whole thing. I don't want that, so I want this one. Go 2 frames out now and just make sure that you're in the same line as the orb, and turn your onion skin is on so you can barely see that little brush of red right there. And what you're thinking here are a couple of things. The first thing is that this orb is generating the pixie dust that's coming behind it. And this pixie dust that was just created the frame before it is falling. So get it to fall. And I'm just touching very lightly. I'm putting just a bunch of little strokes. So this is falling. And let me make a little indication for you. this is falling straight down. The gravity is bringing, I'm on the arc layer, the pixie dust is falling straight down. So when I'm here, this dust is all falling straight down. It would be a mess. It would be crazy of you to try to put some sort of wind in here. It would just be crazy. Don't do it. All right, so let me go back to my brush. Make sure it's still on the same cloud color. And now we're going to go to the next keyframe. So this one's here. And now the pixie dust is coming along the arc line, and this is falling. All of the pixie dust from the previous two images are falling. Now you want to go back in here and make sure that there is a little indication of the cloud so that it's in a good place. You know, you don't want any breaks too much. You want a nice little dispersion of clouds. Go to the next frame, same thing. It's generating right on the arc, and then all of the previous frames are falling. The further out down the timeline you go, the less that you want to show from the first frames. But we've only got our fourth drawing here. And right now I'm just kind of tapping my brush. I'm not dragging it, I'm just kind of tapping it. Go to the next keyframe. This one's here. It's generating right on the arc, and this stuff is falling. Now, there's a reason why I keep saying this. It's because everyone forgets to have this cloud of pixie dust fall. And the other thing that you forget is that as the duration of frames go out in time, it gets dispersed more. There's more of a random dispersion of these initial bits of pixie dust that are going to be in this cloud. All right, so once again, it's following on the arc, and this stuff is falling. Right about now, this is like 6 or 7 drawings into it. You can start to dissipate the cloud a little bit. You can start to dissipate the cloud because of the number of frames and the distance on the stage. Keeping in mind that if you were to have the dispersion of these fall really slowly all the way down through your timeline, you would just be creating so much busy work, and it might not look that good. Maybe you want the cloud to be a little heavier right just behind the orb itself. All right, so once again, I'm tapping, and right about here, we're now like 7 or 8 drawings into it. Now this pixie dust back here can really start to disperse a little bit. This little technique I'm showing you right now is the best way to learn how to do pixie dust, because this is going to show you where all of the little pieces of pixie dust that you're going to have to draw fall or go. So once again, it's following on the line, and this stuff is falling. It's falling, and it's dispersing. It's dispersing itself. I don't know if that's a word. It's the air is breaking it apart. All right, go to the next one. It's right on the line. Now it's falling down. Remember, it's falling. So this is going to come this way. And then break it apart right about there. I'm going to drag it a little bit, okay? And this is one of the reasons why flipping over is a good thing, because it shows you spatially where the falling has to happen. Now, the other thing that I'm doing is kind of overlapping it just a little bit, and I'll explain that here in just a moment. Fall right on the line and get this stuff to fall. It's going downwards. Make sure that this little cloud looks good. This stuff is falling. So this has to go underneath, and this has to go underneath the previous red frame. Same thing here, following on the arc and falling. Cut over, cross over on itself, and fall. This is an important thing here, that these two lines are crossing over each other. I'm going to hit save because there's a lot of data. All right, I'm going to go here, right on the line, right on the arc line, and falling. And this, come over here, cross it about right there, and to start dispersing it about right there. Fill this in. All right, go to this one. Now it's moving pretty quick. This part is still falling. and is dispersing right about there. And now it can come out over here. Now it can come out on the left. Maybe on this one too. Let's take a look. Maybe a little bit more right there. This one. All right, let's continue this just a couple more right here. Now think about what's going on. It's breaking apart. This stuff is falling down. This is falling. This stuff is dispersion. All right, next one over here. And continue this. You've already started this, so you can't disperse this stuff too fast because it'll pop, it'll disappear. So you gotta do a little bit right there. All right, next one. And also you can kind of see that the wiggly line here doesn't really matter too much. What's going to matter is the amount of pixie dust. So let's just get a couple to trail right in here. All right, and just for brevity's sake, on this one, which is about halfway through our arc, let's just take a look at what we've got. I'm going to hit Shift M. Yeah, Shift M. And I'm going to play, see what we've got. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry. Play. All right, so it's looking okay. We got the right idea here. Let me take a consensus from the classroom. Anyone have any questions so far? All right, we're about 11:30, so I have a couple other things that I want to do to get you into this. The idea of drawing this little cloud is super important because it gives you the placement of, let's just watch it again. It tells you that the pixie dust is falling in the correct way. You see how it's falling in the correct way right there? Don't spend more than a half hour without testing it to make sure that you're doing it right. By the way, I've been doing this Zoom thing now for a solid year. And every time I do a recording and put it up on YouTube and then put the link in the classroom, I'm like, oh, no one's going to watch this. They already sat through the demo. But then when I was doing my Zoom from my class Wednesday night, I noticed that 35 people had gone in and watched the session again. So you students are using it. You are using it. So that's a good thing. Either that or some people in India are scamming my account. 35 people. I'm going to add another layer here. This is going to be pixie dust. And I need all of you to get into this mode so that I can see that the evaluation, this is not due next week. This is due in 2 weeks, right? Everyone just clap in your window so I know you're paying attention. Or you can do this. This is due in 2 weeks. It's not due next week. But for next week, I want to see the layout. I want to see the arc. I want to see the timing. I want to see your orb. I want to see this cloud. And I want to see at least that you're starting to think about what the pixie dust is looking like. All right, so the pixie dust, I'm going to add a new one. This new color is going to be pixie dust itself. And now remember, I'm going to pixie. And again, it's always a good thing to name the color the same as the layer, because then that way you're not confusing yourself. And I'm also doing a couple of things. One is I keep the name of the layers just really simple as you can get it. The name of the color, just keep it really simple so it fits inside the color so that you're not confusing yourself. Right now, I'm going to change this pixie dust color. Come on, Toon Boom. To be maybe a little brighter. Maybe I'm going to add a little yellow to it as well. And I can change that. It'll change it in the entire thing all throughout the movie. Okay, it's looking a little green. So I'm gonna tweak this a little bit. Yeah, that's what I want. All right, so now this pixie dust layer, so I've got an orb, a cloud, and a pixie dust, and I'm keeping them all separate. So once again, I'm going, I don't think you want to merge layers like you can in Photoshop. Just keep everything separate. The idea of being able to control everything is more important than keeping it all in one layer. So I'm going to go back to a pencil. I'm going to double check to make sure my settings are correct, because now I want this thing to be a actual pencil line. The brush set in place where the pixie dust is going to go, for sure. But now on this pixie dust layer, I'm going to zoom into it a little bit. And on my arc layer, I'm going to draw a key for you. The thing that you want to do is you want to draw little dots. And you want to draw medium-sized dots. And you want to draw even bigger medium-sized dots. And then big dots. And then open circles. And then maybe an even big and open circles. This is a key. You're giving yourself like a key to work with here. You're also going to want to draw little crosses. And this is going to remind me that there is this strange little thing within the digital tablets that if you don't pick up your mouse right away, you get these little hooks, you know, so I don't want that. You don't want that. You want to make it look like a pencil line. So you want 4-point crosses, you want 6-point crosses, you want maybe a little spiral. Oops, you want a little spiral. And this is where, if you have your settings too high on smoothing, it'll clear out. You won't get a really great spiral. So that's holding right there. That's good. Maybe you want even a bigger spiral. Maybe you want a spiral that goes right and one goes left. Maybe you want a little square. Maybe you want a little triangle. And then remind yourself, you're going to want stars that explode. So give yourself this. If you go back and look at Disney's Aladdin, you can see that they used all kinds of different things. They used big squares and little squares. They used all kinds of things in special effects. The kinds of things that you can draw here as pixie dust can be crazy. You can draw actual stars. You can draw all kinds of things in there. So give yourself a little key to remind yourself of all the different parts that you want to draw. All right, everybody ready? All right, so now the next pass on this is going to be adding in the pixie dust. And this is, right here, this is the action safe area, and this is the actual edge of the screen. So anything I draw out here, no one will ever see, but let's just practice. The pixie dust has to be random. It needs to be random. No two pixie dust pieces can be on top of each other from one frame to the other frame, or the apparent motion will die. It'll stop, it'll stall. So that's what this 2 of 2 means. Don't put any pixie dust on the next frame anywhere near this. So the other thing is that you want to do lots of little dots. Now the thing that you want to do is look at it. You don't want these little hooky things. And I'm really close now, I'm at like 800%. But you don't want, if you do a little peanut shape or a little bean shape like that, that's up to you. But that means you're going to have to follow it all through the next frames. A greater than sign, go to frame, the next drawing. Now you're all the way out here. So right where the cloud was, put in some pixie dust. Put in an open circle. Remember that that open circle is going to have to fall. So for the next 4 or 5 drawings, that little pixie dust has to fall. So, and I'm just tapping my stylus, and we're also going to go back in later and change the orb. We're going to make the orb more interesting. So I'm going to go to the next keyframe, and now I'm going to draw these. So now you can see what I mean about this 2-on-2 thing. So now this little ball has to fall, and you want to make sure that none of those little pieces of pixie dust are on top of the other ones, because they'll stutter, they'll stall, they'll stop. you'll kill the motion. And remember that anything that you draw here, and this is the busy work part of it, it's got to be animated over the next couple of frames. You know you're not going to get into trouble with the position and the timing because it was working. So just go out 2 frames and the same thing. Now you can see that this little ball has to fall and this distance right here is good. And so now that you're getting into the core here, make sure that none of these new pieces that you're drawing are on top of any of the other ones. Here you're clear. Make sure that it's dispersing. Spread. Let's change that. Let's say it's spreading out on top of the arc and below the arc just a little bit. And you want just hundreds of these little dots. And that's the whole trick of making it look like magic, is that you want hundreds of these little dots. You know, and now count. Now you're on your 5th drawing of this circle right here. You can kind of think about this guy going away. But all within here is that you can get all this pixie dust, and you want random quality. That first thing that we put on the key down there is random. So I'm going left and right and up and down and up and down and left and right. And this one looks crappy, but that's okay. And continue out to the next keyframe. So now you can see that if you were to just start drawing these little dots, these little pieces of pixie dust, you could get lost. You got to make sure that you're putting them on top of the cloud. And you're also putting them on top of the cloud on another layer so that you can control the opacity of this cloud. You can control the cloud altogether. You can control the cloud by the color of the cloud. There's all kinds of things you can do to make sure that they're on the right layer. All right, so the other thing that you can do here, and let's just kind of save this. Now that I've done this, let's hit Shift M and play it one more time. To me, it's kind of looking a little slow. You don't want to change your frame rate or anything, but you know, if I was making a critical analysis of this, I might even go back in there and speed it up just a little bit more. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of the other examples. Okay, so look at all the little squares he's drawing. See this? That means that this Mark guy had to follow through with each one of those squares on every single frame for the next 7, 8, 9 drawings. That's just crazy. That's so much work. I mean, it's cool, right? It's cool. And next week we'll talk about, like, see the little exploding star right there? It's cool. And you can see his little, oops, sorry. And you can see his little cloud that he didn't quite follow. But he spent a lot of time on this. And it looks okay, right? We've got 6 seconds. So this was right in that range. Let's look at another one. You can see that her cloud is working, but she doesn't have the spreading out of the pixie dust behind it. It's like all tight like a worm. See that? Like it's like a little worm? It's not supposed to be a worm. It's supposed to be magic. It's supposed to be pixie dust magic. All right. Everyone get the idea here?
Yes.
Right,
Yep.
That's that one again. So let's just take a look at this one and pause it. I mean, think about what this artist is doing. So she decided to put a blue cloud on top of the orb. and then a yellow and a magenta and a green cloud on top of black background. And so these were done with the brush. They were done quickly, but then she went back in and put hundreds of little white dots and hundreds of little blue dots, and then the big sparkly stuff. So this is quite a piece of work, right? You want to make sure that it's not looking like a worm. You want to make sure that it does look like magic, that it doesn't look like a worm. The thing that we're following here is this. This is from Cinderella, 1951. So ever since that time, we've all had to do this all by hand. And then back in those days, all of these little dots were drawn with pencil on paper and then taken to ink and paint, and the ink and paint people had to put a white dot on top of every single one of these pieces of pencil line. And now you can kind of start to appreciate how much time a shot like this would take. Right? All right, let me see if there's one more here. I know I have other ones, and next week we can look at the ones that are on my hard drive. So this artist decided to pick a dark purple background, which is fine. You can do that. That's good. It works, right? So, and you're doing this in several passes. You can see that if we pause like right in the middle here, that she decided that her cloud was just going to be really light. So she used her cloud to make sure that her placement of her pixie dusts were in the right place. She chose to make these little pieces of pixie dust look more like fur, but at speed it looks okay. Again, it's just, there's a lot of work to happen here. And what I want to do is make sure that, yeah, there's a lot of work, but to make sure that you do it right the first time and that you don't have to fix it. A couple of things from my experience is that getting this arc, getting the orb on the arc, timing it out, making sure like I did, oh, this one's way too slow. You know, this one is a little too slow as well. Do it again. Don't spend any time on anything until you get the arc and the orb the correct way and the correct timing. And then go back in and put the little cloud on top of it. Takes just a couple of seconds. Make sure that the cloud is falling correctly, and then start putting your pixie dust in there. Next week, we will talk about going in and playing around with your key and the best way to manage the exploding stars, picking different colors. You could kind of already imagine what that entails. You can already kind of feel what that's like. All right, so right now I have about 20 minutes. So let me, are there any questions from the field right there? Anybody have any questions? I don't have my chat.
So you want us to do for next week, the just like blocking it out, just doing the first pass. Do you want us to do like all the little details too, or do you want us to save that?
Right now, you can kind of see that when I started drawing this orb, that was the better timing, right? I mean, this orb right here, that I'm into this for, yeah, because it's about 80 or 90 drawings, 80 or 90 frames, which is about 45 drawings. And then if you're going to have a cloud layer, you can use multiple cloud layers just to make it really cool. You can, and you're going to use multiple pixie dust layers. So not only are you going to put a white and a yellow, a green, or however many colors you want, but you're going to layer this thing so that you can control it. It's going to take you just a bunch of time to do this. I would say that make sure that the timing is correct first, that your orb is exactly the way you want it. I would think that you get a really good portfolio piece when you do a couple of loops, But be very cautious, everybody. Don't do 3 loops. Don't do more. You'll just create so much work for yourself. And like I said earlier, don't have this puppy go off into the distance, because it'll be a nightmare. You're not getting paid $40 an hour, and you're not you don't have a production schedule that says that this thing isn't due until April. You only have 2 weeks to do this and make it awesome. So do your arc, do your timing for the orb, time the orb out, the cloud, and you should be able to do that in just a couple hours. And then start figuring out if you're doing the pixie dust correctly. I think that one of the things that is a little daunting for you all is that if you start doing the pixie dust and you don't get it right, but then you keep doing it and spending hours on it, it's like, it's really frustrating to turn that layer off and go back and fix it. Follow the rules. No 2 pieces of pixie dust can be on top of each other, or they won't move. They'll stutter, they'll stall, they'll stagger. Make sure that there's a spread. Make sure that it spreads out wide from the top of the arc. So like in this one right here, and I'm on my arc layer, so let me draw this red. So this is just like a hint layer for you. So that remember that on any particular orb, that the spread should be above the line and then a little bit more below the line because of gravity. And then as you go out into this position here, it's still the same thing. It's above the line a little bit and below the line, like a comet almost. But then this stuff here has to be falling. So for this particular example right here, there's going to be all of this stuff. And you want the general length of your pixie dust to be, just about that amount. If you want to trail it off back here, that's good. Just have a couple of pieces that are popping and being like magic down here. But I think it would be incorrect to try to direct you all or anyone is to draw this particular orb and to have all of this stuff falling. That would be just, and it's not effective. It doesn't really work that well. So once again, the arc, the orb, the cloud, and then the original pixie dust that you start putting on it. Does that help everybody? All right, and remember that I keep reiterating that same thing because the directions don't change. All right. Another question from the floor, anybody? Nobody? Nobody? Okay, so let me do the next thing. And this is important for me, and it's important for you as well. Let me just go back over here. Hold on a second. All right, so can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this folder here. And this Toon Boom folder I called 12 February because that's today. Inside this folder, if you've never worked with Toon Boom before, I would be very careful of this folder. This icon is your Toon Boom icon. When you open up and close your work, you want to open up and close from this icon. This is your temporary folder. I don't know what this one, this Ox here is. It's like a second temporary folder. But then you have different folders: elements, environments, frames, jobs, palettes. You can bring in Maya files, Photoshop files, all kinds of things within here. Don't mess around with this if you're not completely confident, because there are things in here like all the layers, all your environments. If you rename anything in here or accidentally rename thing, you will break your Toon Boom file. I promise you. So only ever click on this icon to double click and open up. This is one of the few applications that when you start a project, it gives you a folder. Like look at all the other stuff on the desktop, InDesign, Photoshop, that Rough Animator, that they all give you just single icons. You know, After Effects gives you a project folder that's similar. But when you're doing this, make sure that you are working locally, that you are working from that file on your desktop. Do not work off a thumb drive. Everybody okay? Did you hear what I just said? Do not work on Harmony off of a thumb drive. You will make your life miserable. Your file will be broken, and you won't know that will be broken. You will only find out in week 7, right around midterm, right around progress 1, that your file is broken. Toon Boom is finicky. It's very touchy. Do not ever work on Toon Boom off of your thumb drive. You can transport it wherever you want, but always work locally on the desktop. All right, can I just see hands and nods from everybody? Okay, the next thing is file names. And this is super important. Here's the rule. Use your initials to name your file. And I'm just gonna check the class roster here for just a second. Okay, no two students in this class have the same initials. So just use your initials. Underscore. You can use Pixie Dust version 1.mov. So when you know, I named this one just 12 February, but I should have named mine BB underscore Pixie Dust version 1. And I probably did not do this today because I probably have a whole bunch of other examples on my desktop that are BB underscore Pixie Dust version 1. The idea is keep your file name small as possible. 8 to 10 characters tops. That's the first rule. The second rule, no spaces. Now, I'm not making this up. Game companies, animation companies, movie companies, advertising agencies, all of them. They all have their own rules for how file names should be. If you end up working in Maya and you're doing animation, everything that you name within that Maya file has to be named correctly or it won't render right. So I'm training you. Just keep your file name small, no spaces. Capitals mean something. So use like the Pixie Dust logically, version 1. And then there would be version 2, version 3, version 4. So this not only goes for your actual file name, but anything that you render. Next week in class, I want to see what you're doing. If you look over at the class itself, you can see that I've put a Pixie Dust folder in here. And so just load them up to this Pixie Dust folder. But in order to do that, you have to go back to Toon Boom and say File, Export, Movie, right? You don't want any of the other ones. You don't want an animated GIF, and you don't want to save as. You want to export movie, and then then this is a strange dialog box. So it's coming in as H.264, which is an MPEG-4, and it's going to the desktop. It's going to be called, oh, it's remembering the last thing I did, right? BB_FLV8. And so you want to go in there and change this to, it's going to my desktop. You want this to be BB_Pixie Dust _version 1A. And from frames 1 to 180, 1920 by 1080, check everything, export range. Okay, say okay. You'll get a little progress bar. And then go back to your desktop to see if the movie is working correctly. And don't ever upload a movie without checking it. So I'm going to double click on this And it takes everything, right? I have all my layers turned on. And now you can see that there's something different happening here. Let's take a look at this. It's moving quicker. Did you notice that? It's moving quicker than it is in the Toon Boom folder now, or in the Toon Boom project. Let's watch it again. So you see that timing? Let's go back to Toon Boom and let's hit play. See how it's moving a little slower here? Why do you think that the Toon Boom is playing it slower in the application? Anybody?
I'm gonna say it's playing faster in the actual video because you have more frames, so it's compressing it down to make it all fit.
I think it's playing slower in Toon Boom. Now, I don't have too many things open. You know, I do have Photoshop. I don't have too many things open, too many things that are really heavy. I think it's moving a little slower just because of RAM. I have 40 gigs of RAM. I have backside level cache. That's fine. But I think it's moving a little slower just because of RAM. This is not a big Toon Boom folder. And the preview is moving slower. So what you want to do for yourself is you can build in another logic. You know how we did the first test and the second test. And then this one we were a little bit more happy with, but yeah, I think it's moving at a good speed. If I look at my QuickTime movie, you know, that's moving faster than what we had expected in our Toon Boom project. So that's another step you can build in there. Build your arc, build your orb, build your cloud, and then stop and go back and export a movie.
Can you share your screen, please?
I'm sorry. So once again, build your arc, build your orb, test it, render a movie. See how before you do anything, because that just takes 10 minutes. Build your arc, build your timing on the arc, build your orb, and then render a movie to make sure it's moving at the speed you want. Is it too fast? Then slow it down. If it's too slow, speed it up a little bit. And always count on your QuickTime player before you start doing any of the other stuff. So next week, I would like to see a QuickTime movie. Make sure that you put it in that folder. It's just your initials, underscore, Pixie Dust version 1.a.mov. And I will download them locally to my desktop here, rather than trying to play it off of the shell in the school, because it won't work. There's no preview there. And then we'll look at them and I'll give you feedback and we'll give critiques. And then I'll show you the next couple of steps to make it even more awesome. Okay, everyone understand that step? Always test your movie. The idea behind the code behind QuickTime is that QuickTime has probably 25 different codecs behind it. Everything between .mov, MP4, MP3. There's a whole bunch of codecs that all belong to the QuickTime family, but it is a professional code and it will play as close to on the line as possible. Frame 24 will be on frame 24. Frame 48 will be on frame 48. And it plays audio and video as synchronized as close to each other as possible. So rely on your QuickTime movie. I do not want VLC files. I do not want any other file than a QuickTime movie. MP4s are fine. MP4s are fine. They belong to the QuickTime family, but I do not want a VLC file. Right? And we'll go over that again next week. But remember, this is due in 2 weeks. It's due in 2 weeks. So also what's due is the sketch of this. If you have any questions, email me at my Yahoo rather than the school email. it's just faster, and I don't have to panic because I don't get any little or whatever those notifications all over the place. I don't think I'm forgetting anything.